Sometimes I get ahead of myself and I see that I've put on the presser foot, put the needle in, put the needle plate back on, and I have not yet installed the feed dogs. So occasionally this happens. More often than you would think. But no big deal. Back it up. Take off the needle plate. Want more light? Would you like more light? Woo! Look at that. Okay. Again, the needle bar holds the bobbin race in place while the hook rotates around it. And these little keepers here hold the finger of the bobbin race underneath here. So, 2 little screws. I usually find it easiest to set the screws into the holes of the oh, come on. Those are not the correct screws. Aha, those are not the correct screws. And yes, that was right. That other little screw was in the parts washer. So, as I was saying, I like to set the screws into the holes in the feed dogs. And then use them to locate the screw holes. Okay. When you put the feed dogs back on, there's just a minor amount of adjustment that you can do. And if you tighten your screws down and then back them off a quarter turn or so you can move the feed dogs, but they're not sloppy loose. Set your needle plate back in place. Make sure that it's lined up over the holes evenly. And then take a look and make sure that your feed dogs are lined up with their slots in the needle plate. Once you do that, carefully lift the needle plate off without moving the feed dogs. Like that. And I usually put a finger on it, hold it in place while I tighten those screws. Because if you want a nice straight seam, you want to have your feed dogs aligned with the slots in the needle plate. There we go. Now again, I'm going to bring the finger of the bobbin race up, and you may or may not be able to see it, but that little finger is pointing straight up. And then we're going to set it in that keeper slot. Then the bobbin will stay in one place and the hook will rotate around it. And you're in there. Feels like we are. Then your your bobbin race can rotate. Oh, no, we're not in there. See, there's that finger. So we're going to raise that needle plate up a little bit and move that over. And now, there. Now it's held in place, and the hook can rotate around the bobbin. Pick up the bobbin thread and lock it to the needle thread, your lock stitch. Okay, enough of that. Now we can step forward again and put our needle plate back on. And again, on the featherweight, your needle threads from the inside out, from right to left. So the flat spot on your needle is going to face out, away from the center of the machine. If you look at your needle, you'll see that the flat side of your needle at the bottom has a little scarf here over the eye of the needle, and that's where the hook comes around and picks up that thread, wraps it around the bobbin. On the other side, the rounded side of the shank, there's a long groove that goes all the way down. That's so your thread can lay in it. Again, flat side that way. All the way up to the stop and tighten it down. Put the tension assembly back together. And if you've watched the other video, you've already seen this. I made a separate video just of the tension assembly. But for fun, we'll put it back together for you. Locate all the parts, pieces. If you laid your pieces out as you took them off, per our suggestion, you find them like this. Just in case, let's see, I'm going to tip you down a little bit here. Oh yeah, you can see that. That's cool. So you have the pin that separates the plates when you raise the presser foot. So you can pull your thread through the needle without flexing it. Pin goes in first. Then this piece here, which has the guide for the thread and the stop for the check spring, which is the little spring here that goes up and down when your presser foot goes up and down. So this little stop should face out, and this little thread guide down here should face out. And it's got an elongated screw hole, so that you can adjust the spring on your check spring for the best stitch formation. All right. We like our magnetized screwdrivers, which is why we use this little screwdriver magnetizer from your local auto parts store for a few bucks. So again, elongated screws that goes in, and we ballpark is in the center of the slot there. If you need a little more or a little less, you can loosen this screw slightly and turn this whole plate a little bit. That increases or decreases the tension on your check spring. Okay, after that piece is in place, you have your the two convex plates of your tension assembly, and they face each other so that the thread can go in this way. You want the two curved plates to face each other, and then this plate goes on over the top of that, and it's probably got a name, but heck if I know it. Been doing this for 20 some years, and you know, I just haven't yet learned all the names, all the parts. This plate here has standoff bumps on it, so that, oh, back up. Okay, your check spring goes on around these the two convex plates and this outer plate with the standoffs in it. Got this outer coil which goes on the outside, and the main part of the spring is on the inside, and this pin here is going to go in this corresponding hole here. So slide it on there, make sure that your outer loop goes over the entire split shaft of the tension assembly rather than in the middle of it, and on into that hole up there. Your check spring, you want to raise up until it sits on the, I'm going to, when you put this on, I like to have the loop of the check spring down here at about the 630 position. So maybe that's a 6 o'clock position. Again, slide that pin in the hole. Now when you bring your check spring up to its stop, you can pull it up and it'll snap back against that the stop here with kind of a lively snap. You don't want a whole lot of pressure on it, but you want a nice lively little snap on it there. These standoffs keep the check spring from being crushed between this part that holds the compression spring and the plate back here. Gives it room to freely move. This cup holds the compression spring. This little stop motion washer you want the little finger to point out this way. Stop motion washer goes on next, and that stop motion washer is made to correspond to that little stop inside of your number dial, so that it stops at 0 in one direction and 9.999 in the other. So you want that little stop to be just to the right of that finger on that little stop washer, and then your knurled finger that goes on last. And when you put this on, you want it to go on until it contacts the number plate with almost no pressure on the spring, because you want the thread to be able to move freely between the tension discs when the presser foot is all the way down when it's on 0. So I'm going to back it off. There are adjusting holes in the number plate, as we showed you in the other video, and a little pin in this nut that you can use to adjust. Make sure that your number dial is all the way seated against the back of this nut and not cockeyed, missing the hole. Okay, so now our thread can slide in between the plates with virtually no pressure. And then when we turn it from 0 up to about 3-ish, you have just a little bit of pressure, a little bit of drag on your thread. It's even quite a bit, so 2.5 maybe. You're going to end up with your regular sewing pressure somewhere between 2.5 and 3, and that feels good. When you put in this keeper screw on the outside corner, make sure that you get it in good and straight, because it is so easy to strip this tiny screw here. So do be careful of that. When you put the bobbin in the bobbin case, you want the thread to come off the top this way, so it doubles back on itself into this slot and under the tension spring. Then you want just enough tension on this second screw that you just barely feel the drag on the thread. When you adjust the tension with this second screw that's closer to where the thread comes out over here at the end of the bobbin tension spring, you want tighten it down just a little bit at a time, 1/8 or 1/4 of a turn at a time, until you have just enough tension to dangle your bobbin and bobbin case, and maybe just a little tiny bit more, excuse me, and that should give you just about the right bobbin tension. If you back this screw off until it just unspools when you dangle the bobbin and the bobbin case by the thread, and then tighten it down 1/8 of a turn at a time until it just holds it and doesn't slip down. If I force it, it will go down. So just enough tension to dangle the bobbin case by the thread. And then of course you pull the little lever out to hold the bobbin in place while you put it in. And the bobbin goes in. This way. With that lever facing towards the back of the machine. Okay, we clean the stitch length adjuster, and you see it's got this little lock nut on it, so screw this in 1/4 of an inch or so. And tighten it down. To lock it in place so it doesn't come back out. There we go. And put your number plate on right side up, so your numbers are facing upright as they should. We've already oiled the adjusting block that this attaches to, the adjusting block and its pivot point, and of course the slide inside of the block. I think that I'm going to want to screw that a little further in than a quarter inch into that block. Okay, and then with that lock nut backed off, actually, let's take this back out and move that lock nut up the shaft a little ways. So let's do 3/8 of an inch into that block. There's a screw slot to help you out there. Okay, now that lock nut comes against the adjuster block, then we'll tighten it down just a little bit so it keeps the screw from backing out. Now we have just two things left to do. We're going to take off the hand wheel and clean the shaft that it rides on so that it can spin freely when you're winding bobbins. We're going to take the motor apart and clean it. Oh, and let's, while we're at it, we're going to take the bobbin tension device, the bobbin winding tensioner off, just so you can clean under it, because there's usually a little bit of junk under it. I'm going to use a little bit of alcohol. If you've got a black featherweight, you do not want to use alcohol for cleaning the paint anywhere. But alcohol is good, really good for taking off old oil, and this paint can take it. So this little nub here goes in the slot, so you can adjust if your bobbins are not winding evenly. This is where you adjust that. Get the screw back in here, and I'll show you. So you loosen the screw a little bit, and if your bobbin is winding too fat on this end, you can move it over a little bit. until your thread winds evenly back and forth on your bobbin. You can move it either direction. For ballpark, we're going to set it right around the middle. Again, this particular machine has had almost no wear. It almost looks brand new. There, that's locked in place.